We're joined now by the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah and former Labour Minister Caroline Flint.
We will go back to the breaking news story at Heathrow Airport, though, of course, because that came and happened about 20 to 3 this morning, didn't it? The fire broke out. So too late for the papers, and we're going to get a little bit more on that. But let's talk to Salma and Caroline in the meantime. Shocking, isn't it, Heathrow?
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an event that we've never experienced before. Something like over 1,000 takeoffs and landings a day. I was sort of catching up as I was coming in this morning on Scottish football fans out in Greece, stuck there, waiting to come home after the match. And it's just a knock-on effect that's going to last days. Days.
1,300 flights.
100,000 passengers from BA alone a day. So this is an enormous amount of travel, and also 16,000 homes. Whatever you're travelling, you're going to be impacted by it, aren't you? So, yeah, and the 16,000 homes as well in the area without power. I suppose what people are going to be asking, and we're speaking to Simon Calderer, who's the master of... I mean, we should say that, obviously, just to be clear, the fire isn't at the airport. The fire is at a substation...
in Hayes.
4 miles away in Hayes. But I suppose what people are going to be asking is, how can a substation and a fire there, how can we be so fragile for our biggest airport, which, after all, only a few weeks ago, we were talking about Heathrow expansion being the saviour of the economy. How can we be having it knocked out so easily?
There are going to be really big questions about energy resilience and network resilience, which is what has happened at this substation, what were the fire procedures at this substation, how did something break out? Because you would assume there would be very strong protections on fire. So it is shocking, but to be able to knock out as many homes as that and the entirety of the airport, it's got to be quite a significant thing to have happened. And I'm afraid people are going to have to start asking questions of the management of, you know, the power station and really trying to understand, as we were talking about earlier, the resilience around
Well,
that.
it does. I mean, we're talking to Ed Miliband, Energy Secretary, who, on the programme a bit later, who wants to talk about the first sort of tranche of the solar panels going into schools and some hospitals. But actually, you know, it is the fragility of our energy system on the one hand, and on the other hand, seeing the bills going up. That makes people very concerned.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. And, part of the sort of solar expansion and renewable expansion and presumably nuclear as well is so we can have more security of our own energy supply. And in some ways, down the road, however long that road is, we can actually have more of an impact on prices. But in the meantime, we know that energy prices are still extremely high, particularly for those in fuel poverty. And that's why more support is needed. But this sort of situation, I mean, it does make you think, doesn't it? We talk about cyber attacks on our systems that could shut down our hospitals and other really important infrastructure and services. I mean, here's another example where you have to protect the power supply. And, if anyone's seen a substation, they're pretty nondescript, aren't they? Sort of box-like things in communities. But look at the damage it can happen.
Well, we'll keep on top of that story throughout the morning, and Simon Calderer will be with us as well very soon. Let's move to the front page of the Mirror. This is quite something, and a lot of people have quite mixed feelings about this, I would have thought. David Norris, one of the 6 men who have been accused of the murder of Stephen Lawrence. 2 were only ever convicted. There are still some suspects at large. David Norris was 16 years old at the time, has served 14 years, or nearly 14 years, of his imprisonment. But now he's looking for parole, and during the sort of parole meeting, he's finally accepted he was there, but it said he didn't stab Stephen Lawrence, said he punched him, and he's also said he doesn't hold any racist views. Obviously, what they're looking for at a time at a parole meeting is remorse. But it struck me when I was... one of my highlights of my acting career has been taking part in the Stephen Lawrence drama for ITV, and I remember we researched this, and David Norris specifically, and I remember coming across the police surveillance video that they caught Norris, and he had said then that he wanted to go out and beat and kill black boys and Pakistani boys. I mean, this guy is guilty. He was found guilty. Should he be given parole because he's now said, well, yes, I was there, but I only punched him?
Well, just listening to what you've just said then, and my reaction is no.
Yeah.
I think you're right. When people come up for parole, part of it has to be, do they accept accountability and responsibility for the crime that they've done? Because actually, you know, some people are in our prisons because they will not do that, and therefore, you know, parole boards say, "I'm sorry, but that's not a sense that you have acknowledged this." And it is a fact that, you know, all these decades later, the enormity of this crime and the botched police investigation, as we all know, into it, is still having ripple effect.
Yeah.
And these, you know, teenagers, young men at the time, clearly were involved in racist activity. And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it does seem to me, given the evidence on which he was convicted, just saying I was there doesn't sound good enough to me.
I suppose it also raises the fact that his sentence, I think, was 14 years, 3 months. He's now done nearly 14 years. The fact that he's now admitted finally he was there and that he took part in a punch, although denies stabbing, it's the same sort of, like, horrible feeling you had about that whole case at all, that never really got justice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is... Look, I think we always have to be really careful that we don't allow our emotions and our feelings to impact what is the judicial process and the parole board. The parole board should be allowed to weigh up the facts in front of them. But if we are going to have confidence in the justice system, exactly as you said, the parole board does need to take into account that it's not just a question of whether we're squeezed on prison places or, you know, somebody served their time for a crime. It is, what does it say to the rest of the public about how this person's reacted? And it does sound very cynical to, at this point, decide to admit a limited responsibility of presence.
I mean, I don't know what the legal sort of framework is, but the fact is there are still suspects at large. If he's saying he didn't stab Stephen Lawrence, he will know who it is, or he'll have a good idea. I mean, can he be persuaded or be told...
Or
forced to say, well, you admit you were there now, so give us the details. Or who else was there? And would that, therefore, go, well, actually, based on that, that he's allowing justice to take place, that he may be given some form of parole with conditions?
I mean, I suspect that there's been conversations of that nature with him and his lawyers, and what he's prepared to say is defined by what he's just acknowledged to the parole board. I mean, that is in his gift. Nobody can force him to do that.
Exactly.
That's in his gift, if that's the right phrase, to provide more information, to let us know more about what really happened.
I think we'd really like to know what the Lawrence family think of this, by the way. Doreen and Neville, you know, I wonder whether they feel that this is enough for them. Because Neville in the past has said that if he was remorseful, you know, although he doesn't accept parole, he'd have to accept it. But I wonder whether they accept it.
It'd be very interesting to hear their views. I'm sure we will, actually. I'm sure they'll come out and react. Look, we're going to get you a little bit more on the ongoing story that broke about 23 this morning. Fire at a nearby substation to Heathrow Airport has forced the entire airport to close in the past few minutes. British Airways, the airport's biggest operator, has issued a statement saying that customers are advised not to travel to Heathrow at all until further notice. Well, travel expert Simon Calder is having a very busy morning, I'm sure, Simon. You always are very clear on this. This is, seems to me, unprecedented. In your knowledge, has anything like this happened before?
Certainly not involving the electricity supply. We've seen odd problems, for instance, at Gatwick, which lasted a few hours a few years ago. And I guess the nearest thing to this was the volcanic ash shutdown of the entire skies of the UK and Northern Europe back in April 2010. For this to happen right now is causing immense upset for hundreds of thousands of people. 1,351 flights due to take off or land at Heathrow, getting on for 250,000 passengers who are going to be trying to get where they need to be. I'm one of them. I've got a booking actually from British Airways that is due to be going out from Glasgow to London today. I've got a message saying basically we don't know when we will be able to fly you back, and that is going to be the effect for so many people. I'm just looking at the diversions here. So British Airways managed to get its first flights from Cape Town, from Accra, from Johannesburg, from Los Angeles, from San Francisco, from Singapore into Gatwick Airport, which is great, except that because people are in the right country. But since then, we have seen, for instance, the flight from Accra in Ghana landing in Lyon in southern France. And unfortunately, the people who are on that flight are going to be in a difficult position because lots of them weren't expecting to go to Europe. They won't have the right visas, so they could be just stuck in the transit lounge for, possibly days. British Airways is going to have its planes, its passengers, its pilots in all the wrong places. And until, I'm afraid, that gets sorted out, people are going to be flummoxed, even if we are lucky enough to get things back on track. And the pictures we've been seeing of the fire suggest that's not going to happen anytime soon. Then immediately they can start to rebuild the operation, but it's going to take days. And meanwhile, so I can explain what your rights are. If you're booked on British Airways, any other airline from Heathrow today, then the airline has to get you to your destination as soon as possible. Big problem is that simply won't be that many seats available for people. And meanwhile, if you're stuck somewhere abroad, then hopefully the airline will be finding you a hotel room. But it's desperately upsetting, enormous economic harm running into tens of millions of pounds for the airlines and wider UK business, but also great emotional problems too, because so many people are just depending on flights today to get maybe a family wedding, whatever it is. Everybody's journey is important, and over 200,000 of them today have been wrecked.
Goodness me. And as you say, it doesn't look like it's going to be a quick fix. Already, we've been discussing in the studio, I'm sure it's crossed your mind, Simon, the fragility of the situation. You know, we've talked a lot about Heathrow, haven't we, you and I, on this show over the last few weeks, about the expansion of it and what it could mean. And then you find that a fire, albeit a significant one in a substation, wipes it out. It feels...
Yes,
Sorry, carry on.
Sure, yeah, critical national infrastructure, and it has just fallen over. Now, of course, we've seen the scale of the fire, and an airport like Heathrow has enormous demands on power for everything from the runway lights to the IT systems. So they are huge consumers of it, and I very much hope that somebody is working, well, they will be working on plans to try to switch the airport back on. But yes, it emphasises exactly as you say that you have this very high pressure situation. Heathrow, the busiest two-runway airport in the world with literally no space for any other flights. And Gatwick, the obvious diversion airport, well, that's the busiest single-runway airport in the world, and it's already full with all those diversions coming in. And at every airport, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, all are getting diverted flights. They will not have all the baggage handlers. They won't have the UK border force. And so I'm afraid if you're expecting people to come and see you for the weekend, well, who knows which country they will end up in and when they will finally get here. I am so, so sorry. So much harm. Normally, Heathrow works like a well-oiled machine. Today, well, the spanner has gone into the works, and we are going to see, I'm afraid, lots and lots of stories of people being extremely upset.
Simon, thank you so much. Simon Colbert.
A lot of people getting a lot of bleeps on their phones to come in as well, aren't they, to try and sort that out?
A lot of people stop. Nikki on Facebook says, our son's college trip to Nashville today has been cancelled. The head of college is trying to find out more information and contact BA to find out our next flight. There are a bunch of music students. Kelly on Facebook, my son has had to divert back to Los Angeles because of his... He was flying back last night to Heathrow and has had to go back. So a lot of people... Yeah,
keep anything coming in if it's affecting you. It'd be very interesting for us to hear about it. Should we talk about something else that always gets everybody watching, because we all feel it, many of us watching feel it literally, is the dental crisis. So these extraordinary new figures from the British Dental Association has said that more than a quarter of people who fail to get an appointment, so people who are struggling anyway with an NHS dentist in the last 2 years, have treated themselves at home. That's an extraordinary number of people. And now that, of course, can be anything from doing a little bit of clove oil on your tooth because it hurts to pulling it out with pliers. And we've got somebody we're speaking to on the show who's actually had to do 7 extractions herself because she cannot get in to the dentist. I mean, horrific. But it is horrific,
We can
isn't
see
it?
your teeth, your mouth is so wide open.
It's horrible.
Pulled any of them out.
horrible, isn't it? So, I mean, you know, it's just frightening the degree to which this is now affecting people's lives.
It's absolutely incredible because, look, we've talked about on this programme so many times about sort of dental deserts, you know, how people can't get NHS appointments. And I've heard stories, you know, about people extracting their teeth. But I cannot understand why we are in a position where even in places where there are access to NHS dentists, even in places where people are taking private treatment, it is so hard to get in, to book in and see a dentist. The cost of it as well, even if you are private, if you opt to go off the NHS and pay for it yourself,
because you think, I cannot stand this and I have some money, I won't go on my holiday, I'll get my teeth done instead. It's still hard to get in. Look, just while we've been speaking, Chris has got in touch and said, I'm an NHS patient. I haven't had a dentist since March 2017. I've had to now pull my last 10 teeth out myself. I have no teeth left at all since 2023, which restricts what I can eat. I need dentures, but I can't get an NHS dentist in my area to help me even with that.
It's a scandal, to be honest. And look, I do remember when, you know, I was in the Labour government, we had some crisis around dentistry as well, but actually a lot of resources put in lots of different areas. Actually, more dental practices are opened. And somewhere along the way, I'm afraid, in the last 14 years, we've gone backwards. I know Rishi Sunak tried to sort something out with a dental contract, but what he was offering was not enough. And I hear from family and friends about, you know, their dentists that were doing NHS work just not doing it anymore. And, of course, you know, I think for some of these people, and this is the awful thing, is that they're pulling their teeth out, whereas if they could get in and get root canal work or something else, perhaps those teeth could be saved.
Or even
but because they're poor and they can't afford it, you know, they're doing it themselves. Or when they do go to see a dentist, they're literally pulling them all out.
Well, interesting. We're speaking to a dentist and a patient, or non-patient, if you like, just after 7. But the dentist says that the difference between what they get paid privately to the NHS is huge. I mean, it is, you're talking thousands more they can get on private, which I think is the issue, really. I can understand, you know, they want to get more money, but that's become the problem. You know, that is the issue.
Well, it's not necessarily, though, that they want to get more money. It's that the cost of delivering that service is higher. Like, I don't think that every dentist is just out there thinking, well, how much can I get for this? It's that the cost of delivering that service is higher.
And one of the things is the way it's structured, isn't it? For instance, the dentist, well, I'm sure, will be explaining to us that it's structured that under the NHS, let's say you go for root canal work, you would get paid under the NHS scheme £200 for that. Even if you actually needed 4 root canal works done, it's still £200. So that would take up an entire morning, let's say, or longer potentially. Whereas if you're under a private system, they have money for every piece of work and every hour they work. So that is working against those who need treatment as well,
I've had some quite major work done. It's not cosmetic. You know, I had, you know, pretty bad gums and I inherited it, bad gum disease. I had to go through all this process. It cost me thousands. Eye-watering. I had to have it in Birmingham because it was a bit cheaper than anyone. I was going to try and have it in London at one point. It's just double the price. I went to Birmingham, had to shop around and get it. Still thousands of pounds. I can afford to do that. There is absolutely no way a lot of people in this country could even go anywhere near those prices. And we're not talking about cosmetic stuff. We're not talking about clothes that you wear. These are basic needs.
This is agony.
And they say a lot of our health issues stem from
of course. And I think it's right that the number one reason for children being in hospital between, I think, 4 and 10 is having their teeth taken out. So, I mean, Wes Streeting has put some money behind, I think, something like 700,000 more appointments in areas of need and toothbrushes.
But that's only 2 appointments.
But
a maximum per dentist per month.
No, absolutely. So but it goes back to the contract, and that's what they're negotiating at the moment. They've got to get the contract right. That's fair.
But the contract's going to have to be about money. And so when Rachel Reeves does her kind of what's supposed to be a spring statement and what sounds like it's going to end up being an emergency budget, Do you think that there's going to be more money that's going to be put behind the NHS dentistry? Because this isn't just about children, where there's a bit of poor parental responsibility as well, I think, in that. This is about adults who cannot access that treatment.
Look, it all comes down to money, but, you know, again, the NHS as a whole, you know, is a big receiver of money, and it got an extra, whatever, 20 billion last year. Part of it will be about priorities. What should the NHS be supporting and paying for?
Yeah, OK.
And that's a decision politicians are going to have to make.
Should we talk about something that I know Adol is incredibly passionate about? It's bins in Birmingham.
Yes.
And also the double impact. So, first of all, in the Daily Express and other newspapers this morning, talking about the council tax rise, which you say leads to almost a triple whammy for people
in Birmingham, in the last 2 years, because of the council almost went bankrupt and they've passed the buck on to constituents and people of Birmingham, our council tax has gone up, my council tax has gone up 17% in 2 years. I mean, that is extraordinary. Again, I can afford it. I can afford it. And then you look outside your window and the bins aren't collected, you know. And for those of us that have got, like, if you've got a garden bit at the back, you can hide the bin, put the bin somewhere. If you've got a front garden, I've got a front garden, my bin goes in the front garden, it's fine. If you live in terraced housing, which we're seeing the pictures of in Birmingham, in Small Heath, Sparkhill, Selly Oak, they are piled up on the streets. They are in Aston, where I go almost every weekend to watch the beloved Aston Villa. You know, it is one of the poorest areas in Birmingham anyway. They are now reporting, and this is what people are saying, they are seeing rats the size of cats. I mean, this is Birmingham, the UK's second biggest city. This should not be happening. Birmingham City Council has got to get its act together, surely.
Yeah, look, I think the Birmingham City Council clearly, you know, there's a whole thing about how they got into such debt, how they became bankrupt. There's a lot of councils of different political colours that are in the same situation. But on this issue, I mean, it's a health hazard. It's a public health hazard as well for people. And I just don't see how, you know, to be honest, Unite the Union think this is going to do them any favours with the public. From what I understand, the councillors at Birmingham have agreed a plan to reduce some of the services, some of the jobs they're redesigning. They're offering all the workforce a chance to retrain. Nobody's going to lose their job. And I really think, you know, in the interests of public health, in the interests of actually recognising the reality, I think this is a bad move by Unite the Union.
So bin men should have the right to strike too. If they feel, bin men and women, you know, if they feel that they are being hard done by and they're getting a bad pay deal, then they should be able to take action, shouldn't they?
Yeah, they absolutely can take action. But and I agree, Caroline, they have had an offer that's been put to them. And so I think the union needs to come out and say why they don't want to accept that offer and why that's unfair. Because, to be honest, getting a 10% rise, which is what was agreed to over and above the 4.99% that you can do without a referendum in Birmingham, is a bit of a slap in the face if you've now ended up with all these bins outside as a public health hazard. But what I'd like to know is, what is the Deputy Prime Minister, who also has responsibility for councils, what is she actually saying about this? Because Angela Rayner could go in and use a whole suite of things available to her, levers available to her, to go in and force the council to do something. So I'd like to see what the Deputy Prime Minister is going to say about this.
They have forced the council to do something. They have forced the council to recognise that it has to cut its budget.
OK, well, you two are coming back later on, aren't you? I'm sure we'll talk more about bins. And actually, at home, even if you're outside of Birmingham with the particular problem, the thought of your council tax going up so much and the service you're getting from it and the struggles that you're having, we'd love to hear about all of that. And Ed Miliband is our government minister this morning.
It's the idea, is it, that the state fails or council fails, but the buck ends up with people at home. And that is the bit I think people can't accept. Ready for a shocking statistic? This really is. More than a quarter of people, who failed to get an appointment with an NHS dentist in the last 2 years treated themselves at home. That's according to a new survey.
And one of those is Layla Waters, who's pulled out 7 of her own teeth because she was just in so much pain. She couldn't stand it any longer, and she joins us now to talk about it alongside Lenda Cruz from the British Dental Association. Now, Layla, we've spoken before, haven't we? And at that point, you were only at 4 teeth having to pull out, just a small matter of 4 teeth.
Just a small
and even after talking about it and appearing on Good Morning Britain and trying, the problem has gone on. you just can't get a place? Is it that simple?
It is that simple. I have made, from the very beginning of over the last maybe 2 years, I've made over 100 phone calls just trying to find a dentist that's taken on. And every single one that I've phoned, there's just no chance of getting in.
So you
They're
contacted
waiting
100 different places and you keep going back and asking and asking?
Yeah, and the waiting list, I just keep getting told they're like 18 months long and we can't put you on it because they're way too long.
So they won't even put you on the waiting list, even though...
No.
So it's not really a waiting list?
No.
It's a backup.
They've told me that once it gets to over a year, they won't put you on it.
Because they know that they'll never have the place for you to see it.
And lady, so you've tried not your local dentist, but have you tried all? Where do you live? Where are you sort of?
I live in Cambridge.
In Cambridge. So have you tried all? Have you pretty much been to all the dentists in your?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, honestly.
So it's not even to the same one every time. You've called different ones.
not the same one every time.
Wow.
And the closest one I've found, and it was 2.5 hours away.
And what did they say? Was that possible or no?
If I could have got there, and at the time,
You couldn't.
I couldn't. No, when I was struggling to get money together just for general life.
Yes.
That for me was just not doable. Just not doable at all.
You couldn't get, you know, the cost of getting there to do it. So instead, you literally took a pair of pliers?
I did.
Was it pliers? We've been saying pliers. I wasn't sure.
Well,
Was it...
The first time it was pliers, but
God,
as crazy as it sounds, you get used to it. After that, it was just a bit of tissue, and I was putting it on my finger.
And the problem
and that
is
the reaction that,
horrible.
Yeah.
I just feel for
And
you.
also, because your teeth haven't been treated, as we know, Len, the untreated teeth then get worse and worse. So now you said the last one was so loose, you could, with a piece of tissue, pull it out.
Yeah.
Oh, Len, I mean, you must be listening to this as a dentist, and we know how you want people to go to the dentist. That's the nag that parents say to their children, you know, and make sure they do themselves. Get to the dentist, because if you get in early, you can prevent problems like this happening. Your heart must sink.
It is. I'm really, really sorry for Layla. She shouldn't be in this situation at all. Very sympathetic to that particular situation. But we're in in the 21st century here in Britain. We're dealing with like a Victorian Dickensian type approach to taking your own teeth out. So fundamentally, this is down to the contract. A contract that's been in place since 2006. Various different governments have walked through this, sleepwalked through this whole problem. And it's the way dentists get paid. So it's not that dentists want to do more private work. I'm committed to the NHS. Lots of dentists are committed to the NHS. They want to work with the NHS. But it's a fundamental way dentists get paid. Now, it's a simple
Well,
simple
explain
process.
that, because I think from the outside looking in, what people see is huge figures for private work. You get less figures under the NHS. So they say, well, if they just accepted getting less money, then surely we could all get access to an NHS dentist. Why are you saying that's not the case?
Because it's the way dentists get paid. So if I do 3 fillings, 5 extractions and 4 root canal treatments, I'd get paid exactly the same if I was doing 3 fillings. OK, so I get paid exactly the same. So it's like kind of saying to a builder, come and build 2 rooms for me. While you're at it, could you build 3 rooms for the same price? That system has been in place since 2006. Okay? So it's a fundamentally flawed system. Various governments have said we're going to fix the problem. So dentists want to work in the NHS. We want to spend time with patients. We want to do prevention. We want to look after patients. But it's fundamentally
But the private alternative prices a lot of people out the market. I was talking earlier, I've had quite a lot of dental work over the last 2-3 years. I mean, it was tens of thousands of pounds, and I had to pay in different instalments. I couldn't pay all at once. I mean, I'm probably one of very few people who could afford to do that. I was very lucky and I'm very grateful. I mean, people like Layla can't... what is the profit margins that dentists are making? That's the thing. And should that be regulated?
Well, that's the real cost of dentistry. That's the real cost of dentistry.
But the NHS there's no way the NHS will be able to pay that. The NHS can't pay £20,000.
Precisely. So the government has to decide what it wants to do. Does it want to actually provide a core service, OK, for very few people, doing simple extractions and urgent treatment, or does it want to provide a comprehensive service? There is not enough money that's going into dentistry to fulfil the whole population. So 50% is all if everybody...
The thing is, though...
only 50% of people could actually afford to go. The government can afford 50% of people.
So what are we going to do? Just have to accept it? The government have said that they've created this 700,000 extra urgent dental appointments to help people like Layla. Will that help at all? Is that a drop in the ocean?
It's kind of a drop in the ocean. 700,000 is essentially 2 new appointments per month per dentist.
So do we just have to live with this then? Because we know the government hasn't got money. They're being tasked with cutting back.
It's not about the money. It's actually about the
way...
So
what's the solution then?
The solution is... there was a pilot that we were operating in for about 10 years. It was capitation. We're based on capitation. We don't get a salary, OK, but a capitation system worked fantastically well. Yeah. But the government decided they're going to pull that, the last government.
Layla, just the last question to you.
The last government.
Now, a lot of people, teeth are really important to people, aren't they? People now have their teeth cosmetically done. There's nothing wrong with their teeth. It's such a thing. How does it make you feel inside? I'm sure you don't want to have your missing teeth on the front of your mouth like they are now, but you have to live with it. How does it make you feel as a human being, as a person?
It affects every part of my life. I don't go out.
Oh, bless you, Layla.
Oh, my love. Oh, come here. It's so awful, isn't it? It's not only the pain, but it's the emotional, mental.
People don't get that side of it. But when I look in the mirror, my gap is all I see.
Yes.
And when I think to the person that I was before, I'm totally different.
Oh, so your confidence is gone,
I don't know how I made it here, but I think because everything happened so quick, I didn't have a chance to think about it, but I wanted to come because there's thousands.
You're doing this on behalf of lots of people.
Absolutely. And I'm not here because I want free dental work. I'm here because I need affordable dentistry. It's like you were saying. Yeah. That's absolutely never going to be doable for me. No. But if I had an NHS dentist that was affordable, that would change.
Change your life.
So you're prepared to pay something towards it? Of course you are.
Absolutely.
But within your means. And I think that's fair enough.
I just want an NHS dentist. That's...
Yeah.
Well, Layla, it's not right that you should be feeling this way, but it's incredibly brave for you to come on because, you are helping everybody and people will see and understand and you will be helping hundreds of thousands of others in your situation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Thank you.
And Layla, you're absolutely gorgeous as well. Don't worry about it. Honestly, you're amazing. You're an amazing human being. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks. Desperate restaurant owners are calling for tougher action against dine and dash thieves who leave without paying the bill.
Some incredible research actually, from UK Hospitality, and they shared it exclusively with Good Morning Britain. And it reveals that nearly a third of venues fell victim last year. A third.
It's unbelievable. It's just...
Owners say the problem is just getting worse. Well, Aldo Esposito and his wife Deborah know all about that, and they join us now along with celebrity chef Aldo Zilli. Good to see all of you this morning. So you can't believe, can you, how big a problem this is for you in your business? No. Tell me the sort of things people are doing.
They use all sorts of different techniques, really. We've had people planting things in their food or going outside for a cigarette and then running off, or finding excuses that the food wasn't to their liking after they finished a 3-course meal. So there's all sorts of...
Some just say they're just
planting stuff in food. So what kind of things are they planting in the food?
One instant where we had 8 children and 4 ladies, they planted a piece of plastic of a plastic bottle, which we don't have in a restaurant. So
and you saw them do that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was there at the time.
Yeah.
So this is deliberate attempts to get out of paying.
They do tend to order the most elaborate of meals. They'll have a complete fill of drinks, food, everything, before they then decide they'll get to their main course, usually, halfway through the main course, and then they'll plant something and decide that they're not going to pay, or sometimes they just eat an entire meal and just say, we're not paying.
And what do you do at that point?
It's so difficult, isn't it? We call the police now on all of our incidences, but they feel a bit their hands are a bit tied. I don't know. They don't know how to deal with it.
So how much has this cost you altogether so far?
Last year alone, about £2,000.
That's in food. We've also had to install extra CCTV in the restaurant because obviously that's footage that police need.
Which is a lot of money for restaurants, isn't it?
It's a small restaurant.
Look, Aldo, I mean, I'll tell you what, you wait for one Aldo and two come along at the same time. Here we go.
We're like buses.
You're like a bus.
I've never met another
a nice
Aldo in my
bus,
life.
though. Nice bus. Aldo, I mean, you've worked in this business a long time. You're one of our country's most famous chefs. I mean, what is going on here? Why do people feel that they can do this? What is it about the food industry they think, you know, that it's OK, that they think, well, actually, this is all right. I can literally steal off restaurateurs?
Well, it's not new. It's been going on since I started my restaurants in the late 80s, 90s. And we had restaurants in Soho, 3 or 4 restaurants in Soho with tables outside, which is a recipe for disaster because the tables outside, you can't control them every 5 minutes like you can inside. So people just get up and leave without paying. So we had to employ extra staff. My managers took their law in their own hands, which is not great because we lose the manager for a couple of hours running down the road after people that haven't paid the bill.
Chasing diners down the street? Wow.
We did that nearly every day. Yes, in the summer it was a crazy. And we lost, you know, we used to lose between 400 to 1,000 a week.
Could you, if you wanted to, charge people before or take their credit card details, say, right, we're going to take your details so that, you know, we can pay the bill quite easily?
Well, a lot of chain restaurants, as we know, have done that, and it's working very well. You pay as you order. In Italy, there's a lot of that going on as well.
Is that something you would think about, or is it quite tricky in terms of ambience and the relationship with your customers?
Absolutely.
We feel it is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's more of a fine dining restaurant. You want to go out and relax, enjoy, you know, be welcomed. You know, if you get asked for credit card details when you walk through the door, it just sets the wrong
it doesn't feel
thing.
There's already an air of mistrust, isn't there? Where, you know, in this industry, it's a lot about trust with your customers and vice versa.
I also wondered, is there any argument that, you know, we see people genuinely struggling for money at the moment, don't we? Struggling to choosing between eating and heating and difficult things. Is there any sense that you feel that people are doing this because they're desperate? Is it because they're hungry, or is this criminal behaviour?
It's definitely criminal behaviour,
Yeah.
for sure. They come there already with a plan, and it's a way of life for them.
Yeah.
Is that your experience, Al?
Well, yes and no. I think because of the economy situation that we're in, I think a lot of it, you know, a lot of people dream of going to a posh restaurant. And I found last Valentine's, so a couple came, they had a big argument on the table, and then the girl starts crying, goes outside, the man gets up, they've already had their drink and their food, the man gets up to comfort her, and follows her outside, and we never see them again.
Whereas you were probably
we
thinking...
end up with 250 quid bill.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and also, what the other side to this, the problem to this, is that a lot of restaurants, chains, if you like, now is beginning to blame the staff. So therefore, the staff have to fork out the money.
Yeah.
So it's a catch-22 situation that needs to be addressed. I think government needs to do something about it, and the police needs to wake up to, you know,
to the problem,
do a bit more to help us.
All right. OK, thank you so much, Aldo.
I once had an awkward moment. Bob's Cafe in Muswell Hill.
Are you making this up?
I'm not. Bob's Cafe. I went to the loo.
You go to somewhere called Bob's Cafe?
Let me tell the story very quickly, because we're running out of time.
I think she did that in my restaurant, actually.
I'll leave it.
No, come on.
So I went to the loo because I was filming afterwards, and I'd spent ages doing my hair and makeup. When I came out, the staff were outside. They thought I'd done a runner. So embarrassing. So embarrassing. I had to just say, no, I just take a long time in the loo. So Bob's Cafe, I'm sorry, but I didn't know there was a door just by the loo, and they thought I'd gone out the back. So they were after me.
The first major project for the publicly owned Great British Energy will make an investment of £200 million to fund solar panels on hundreds of schools and NHS sites around the UK.
Very big and exciting project. And Energy Secretary Ed Miliband joins us now. We're going to talk about the solar panels, of course, Ed, and lots of other things, but we do have to start with the ongoing story at Heathrow. I mean, extraordinary situation, devastating for lots of people and people's plans, personal and professional, but also extraordinary that a fire at a substation could wipe out our biggest airport, hugely important for our economy. It makes us feel like our energy system is rather fragile.
Well, thanks so much, Kate, and good morning. Good to be with you. Look, first of all, I want to say my heart goes out to all of those passengers coming into Heathrow, due to be leaving Heathrow today, who've had their lives and plans so badly disrupted. I've spoken to National Grid this morning. We've seen a catastrophic fire, as you've been reporting, at the substation. It not only affecting the generation from the substation, but as I understand it, some backup generation which was in place. National Grid are working as hard as they can to restore the power, but obviously we're going to have to learn lessons about why this happened, first of all, and secondly, whether sufficient resilience was in place at a major institution like Heathrow.
And you've been talking about that. I suppose that you know, we've discussed Heathrow, haven't we, so much recently, being touted at the expansion as good for the economy and good for growth. Does it make you question whether, you know, I know you were very against that extra runway, but does it make you question whether actually there should be more airports in more places? As people find themselves stranded, we're getting things in this morning, diverted to France, diverted to other parts of Europe, people stranded in America and all over the place. Does it make you think, actually, we need a different kind of system?
Well, I don't think one should jump to conclusions at this stage, Kate. I think what it makes me believe is we've got to understand why this happened, and we've got to work out what the lessons are for the resilience of our infrastructure. I mean, National Grid, in their conversation with me this morning, said it's like a fire they've never kind of quite seen anything like the scale of what happened before, and it was the seriousness of the fire which knocked out the backup as well. But it makes Heathrow look quite vulnerable, and therefore, and we've got to learn lessons, as I say, about not just Heathrow, but how we protect our major infrastructure.
Mr. Miliband, is there any sort of suggestion of what the cause of the fire is? A lot of people, you know, are coming up with all sorts of theories this morning, I suspect. But, I mean, are we ruling out any foul play at all at this point, or is everything on the table?
Well, look, there's no evidence of foul play, but obviously, Adil, though the priority at the moment is to get the fire out, restore the power, and then, as with anything like this, and it is relatively unprecedented, there'll be a proper look at what caused it. But there's no suggestion that's been put to me of foul play.
OK. Let's talk about what you want to talk about this morning, which is the announcing this £200 million of investments in solar panels for schools and hospital roofs to save money on energy bills. £80 million will go towards 200 primary schools. There are nearly 17,000 primary schools in England, though. So, in reality, Mr. Miliband, this is just going to help 1% of schools. That's not exactly groundbreaking. It's not going to make that much of an impact, is it?
Well, it is going to have a massive impact for the schools and hospitals that will be helped. And let me tell you what the plan is, Adil, because at the moment...
1%?
At the moment, you've got many schools and hospitals facing sky-high energy bills as a result of our dependence on fossil fuels. Those fossil fuel markets, you see gas prices going up. This will cut bills for schools, 200 schools, 200 hospitals, a 300% increase in the coverage of solar panels in terms of the NHS, in terms of hospitals. The average cut in the bill will be £25,000 for a school, £45,000 for a hospital. I was talking to a head teacher here in Sheffield, and we're visiting the school today. They have solar panels. They're one of the few schools that does. It's cut £40,000 from their energy bill, as he put it to me, about the equivalent of the salary of a special needs teacher. This shows how our publicly owned energy company investing in schools and hospitals, investing in solar panels, abundant, cheap energy can help our public services.
I mean, it's obviously laudable. I can't imagine anyone's going to think it's a bad idea. But we've already hearing this morning that the growth figures have been revised down. People are fearful that the Chancellor's spring statement is actually going to be more of an emergency budget. Are you confident you're still going to have your £8 billion investment into this? And actually, are you going to have the power and the money to continue making the difference, even if it is, as Aldo said, to 1%?
Yes, I am confident, Kate, because the Chancellor and Prime Minister both believe, as do I, that investing in the clean energy transition is crucial for jobs. You know, I was at a new heat pump factory in Derby yesterday. 200 jobs being created as a result of the clean energy transition. We've got investments in carbon capture and storage, creating thousands of jobs. This is not just about climate change. This is not just about doing the right thing for the planet in the long term and for future generations. This is about how we grow our economy. The Chancellor often says we need stability, we need reform, and we need investment. And this is about investing in the future. Lots of it private investment, some of it public investment, to create those good jobs of the future that so many people want to see.
In the meantime, all our energy bills are going up, aren't they? In a month, going up by 6% in many cases. You famously said you would cut £300 from people's energy bills before the election and immediately after. When are people going to see that?
Well, look, we're sticking to our pledge to cut bills by up to £300 by 2030, Kate. And the reason bills are going up, and it's really important to understand this, is because we've seen international gas prices go up by something like 15% from one quarter to another. And this underlines the point that we've got to get these solar panels up, these wind turbines up, this infrastructure built. And we are working absolutely as hard as we can, as fast as we can to do that. You know, you'll have seen there's opposition to some of our plans on building the transmission infrastructure, the pylons. People say, well, why do we need them? Well, the reason we need them is precisely because at the moment we are on this roller coaster of global fossil fuel markets. Until we have cheap homegrown power connected to people's homes, we can't get bills down. We're working as hard as we can to make that happen.
Mr. Miliband, just want to bring up Gaza with you. I thought this week was an incredible moment, actually, from the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, who was very strong with his language in the House of Commons, condemning the actions on the 18th of March this week. He said it's been the worst day of this war. UNICEF, quoting 180 children died in one single day. You, when you were leader of the opposition, called on the government at the time to do more, to condemn more. Do you think your government is doing enough now? We have heard that an English national was wounded in the UN compound that Israel bombed. That is one of our citizens. If that doesn't bring this close to home, what will? Are we doing enough as a UK government, do you think?
Well, we are, and we are. Look, I take this situation, and we take the situation incredibly seriously, what is happening in Gaza. Adil, and what you are saying and what we have seen this week is deeply, deeply disturbing. But that's why David Lammy, Keir Starmer are working so hard to get this ceasefire restored, because that's what the people of, well, the people of Israel and, frankly, the people of Gaza need. With the greatest of urgency, we need this to happen. And the right thing to be doing as a government is to be working diplomatically behind the scenes to do everything we can, including with the United States, to get this ceasefire restored.
Is there a red line, though, for the government? If a ceasefire... the ceasefire has been broken, and we can argue that Hamas have contributed to that as well as Israel, but is there a red line? Do we hold Israel to account at any point? Is that on the table for the UK government?
Well, you're right to point out the Hamas rocket attacks, that the ceasefire, hasn't held on either side, and it's right to say that. But absolutely, we hold Israel to account, as we would every country. And I do that. David Lammy does that. The Prime Minister does that. But the key thing, given our role as a country, is to be the people, the honest brokers, trying to make sure that we get this ceasefire restored. That's the thing people need most of all. That's the thing the people of Gaza need most of all. It is incredibly urgent. Adil, you're completely right to raise it, if I may say so. And it is something that the government is working tirelessly to seek to make happen.
Okay.
Good to speak to you this morning.
We really
Good luck.
appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Thank you.